Chuck Mallet was a great singing coach for the whole of the second half of the last century. He was very fond of piano duets, so much that if he didn't have a partner to play with, he'd play both parts in turn. And then, if anyone phoned and asked him what he was doing, he'd say, "I'm playing with myself." And I thought, that sounds like a good title for a song. I love piano duets. I have some on my shelf, and I enjoy them playing with myself. I haven't got a partner, I've long been on the shelf, but I'm quite happy playing with myself. I sometimes take the bottom, I play it for a while, and then I change position. I'm very versatile. So until I have a fairy or perhaps a little elf, I'm happy to keep playing with myself. Oh, I've lived in Islington. Well, I've lived in the borough of Islington for about 53 years, but I've lived in this flat for 51 years. I'm well into my 52nd year. I moved in 1966, and I've been very happy here. This is a song about one of my neighbours. Dear Jeremy Corbyn, I've a suggestion for you. Prime Ministerial hopefuls must look respectable to be electable. So, Jeremy Corbyn, though you're not that way inclined, I think what you need is a gay friend to get you to look more refined. It was decided that I should do my national service, which had been deferred due to my studies. My father said, "You might learn some sense during your 2 years in the forces." Well, at the time, there was a popular comedy radio programme called Much Binding in the Marsh, which always ended with a few topical verses. I wrote some and sent them to the stars of the show, Richard Murdoch and Kenneth Horne. Well, the following Friday, I was listening to the show on the radio in the mess at RAF Kenley, where I was stationed, and I heard my verse being broadcast.
At Much Binding in the Marsh, to tell the world of gorgeous Gus's wedding.
Well, they used 15 of my verses, and I never got a brass farthing or a credit.
Binding in the Marsh.
I think I was so disillusioned by show business that I decided to heed my parents' advice and become a solicitor. They weren't against me going on the stage, which is what I really wanted to do. But they said, get a professional qualification first, and then you'll have something to fall back on. And I guess that was sensible advice, really. And once I'd qualified as a solicitor, I became very ambitious to succeed. And I became a partner in this big city firm after working there for 7 or 8 years. And I was very chuffed. I thought it was the height of my ambitions. But after a very few years, I became very disillusioned. I wasn't happy being a solicitor. I didn't feel it was what I wanted to do. And I got quite depressed and went to the doctor. And he said, "Well, I think you ought to see a psychiatrist." So I did. And he had this idea that I should get married. He said, "You're 38. If we get you married by the time you're 43, we won't be doing too badly." And I said, "Just a minute. I've told you I'm gay." And he said, "Oh, no, you're not." And he was insistent that I should get a girlfriend. And I did get a girlfriend, and a very nice one too. The way she treated me was oh so beautiful. The way she treated me was simply great. I loved her sweet caress that made me whisper yes. She could have made, I guess, a gay man straight. Oh, I met her through the church, the Catholic Church of all things. and she was a widow and with 3 young children. And I just felt a bit drawn to her. She sounded a rather magnificent young woman, and that was the start of an affair which lasted 2 or 3 years. But when I dream about her, when I reminisce, the way she treated me is what I miss. It was quite wonderful to start with. I mean, I'm very fond of her, but I don't think it would have worked really long term. I think the final straw was probably when I decided that I really didn't want to be a solicitor anymore and decided to become a London cab driver. And she said, you can't go down from being a solicitor to a cab driver. But of course it was what I wanted, and the affair had gone past its sell-by date, and it was a relief to be entirely free. And I think I immersed myself in my work, really. I enjoyed being a cab driver, though, because it enabled me to go to the cab shelters for my evening meal, which was a very nice thing. I enjoyed the company, but I didn't do so much driving. In multicultural Britain, I'm very happy to be. In fact, I'm totally smitten with multi-ethnicity. I became an actor officially in about 1992. And I got parts in fringe productions quite easily for a number of years. I had an agent, and she got me auditions, and eventually an audition for Bridget Jones's Baby, which was a wonderful, wonderful thing. I didn't think I'd get it, but I was auditioned with another gay man. To my delight, we both got the job. I was in 2 minds whether to enter it. My agent was not in favour of it, because she said they can do whatever they like with the footage and make a fool of you. And I thought, well, I'm not going to do anything which will enable them to make a fool of me. And I asked various friends for their opinion, and most of them were against it. But the one who decided me was my arranger, actually, Charles Miller, because he said, I think you'll regret it more if you don't do it. But it was tiring, you know, for an 80-something-year-old. I went to France for 3 months in 1981, I think it was, and cycled down to Aix-en-Provence and did a 4-week language course in the university there. And I thought, oh, my French will never be so good again. So I applied to lead walking holidays in France. And that was a very enjoyable time, because I led holidays at home and abroad, and in France and Greece and Spain and the Azores and Madeira. It was wonderful. To Scotland's Kirkietum, along the backbone of England, they say. And what I mostly recall of that journey are the people I met on the way. I mentioned this guest house that I go to twice a year. There's a piano in the lounge, and people often ask me to give them a tune. And I thought I'll try the song on them. I love the driver of a number 19 bus, which plies a route through London between each terminus. I thought they probably won't like it. They all look so straight, and anyway, they probably won't even understand it. But I played it, and they listened very attentively. They laughed. You couldn't have imagined. They wanted more. Romantic scene, but something stood between us. A bloody plastic screen. Eventually, I wrote enough for a one-man show. That, as I've said, is called Playing with Myself, and it goes down well. So until I have a fairy or perhaps a little elf, I'm happy to keep playing with myself. It's an attractive title, I think. Some people think it's a little bit risque, but... And I never suffer torments at the thought of my performance, when I'm just enjoying playing with myself. How much of me in it? Oh, there's not so much of me, really. Well, there is a bit of me because, of course, I have been on the shelf for many years. So there's a bit, and I do live alone, and there is a bit of me, but it's more a jokey song, really. A play on words.
What could be better than that? My record's infernal, but hope springs eternal.
Lovely young men in my flat. Do you think it will do? Will it do you think?